All right, welcome back in, everyone, to the Go 247 podcast. I'm Glenn West, the senior writer here at the site, joined once again by our longtime recruiting analyst and everything LSU here at the 24/7 site, Sonny Ship. Sonny, how are you doing today, man?
Good, man. How you doing? It's Bama week, right?
Bama week. It's been a busy week. It's going to be a busy week, I know, for recruiting. We're hoping to maybe touch on that a little bit later in the week as we get more confirmations on visits and kind of who will be in town. But it's getting to be that time. I mean, a couple months out now from, well, I should say less than 2 months out now from the early signing period. So it's certainly going to be a busy time for us here over at the site. But first off, we got a pretty big football game here on Saturday here as LSU welcomes in Alabama. Number 6 number versus number 15 will be the official matchup this weekend on Saturday night in Death Valley. So it's going to be a really the anticipation has been building already for well over a week now, and you can certainly feel it here in Baton Rouge. People are just chomping at the bit to get this thing started, get this thing kicked off, and see what Brian Kelly's team looks like here, I guess, in their first matchup here against Bama. Just I guess a couple quick early thoughts here on this Bama team. Offensively, you're looking at the Heisman Trophy winner here and Bryce Young, stellar player. I mean, you saw it, you've seen it for 2 years. He's going to have a game plan all to himself, and I think that's going to be a really big key here for LSU is defensively. How do they want to approach him? How do they want to approach this Alabama offense? And that's a little bit different than I would say years past. They have a lot of weapons, but they don't have that, I guess, standout guy. That Devontae Smith, that Julio Jones, that one guy that you're really scheming for. There's a bunch of really talented players on this team. I would say if there was one guy you had to peg into that hole, running back Jahmyr Gibbs is the guy that pops off to me. They get him involved not only in the run game, but he's among the leaders on pass catching as well, and they get him involved out of the backfield. A really phenomenal football player. Just looking at Alabama, I guess, offensively, Sonny, where do you see, I guess, some of the challenges that LSU will have coming into this game defensively?
Well, I think it starts in the trench. When you go back and you look at past LSU Alabama games that got away from LSU, you always go back to LSU fans always go back to saying, "Wow, we really okay." That tells us right there that we got to get better on in the trenches. We've got to get stronger. We've got to be able to rush the passer without having to send the house after them, and I think that's going to be the telltale on Saturday. B.J. Ojulari, Harold Perkins, Jaquelin Roy, all of those guys. Really in the front six, the D line and the linebackers, they're going to have to tackle Bryce Young when they get an opportunity. We saw LSU squander opportunities against Anthony Richardson, squander some against Jackson Dart, although they really started affecting him from about the second quarter on. Robbie Ashford's another guy. They didn't, they let him move around and make too many plays with his arm by
Hendon
just
Hooker,
extending plays.
yeah,
You know, yeah. So the list goes on. The
but
list goes
yeah,
on. Yeah, and so you have to make those plays when you get those opportunities on Saturday. You've got to, making those plays is the difference in between a 2nd and 9 or a 2nd and 17, a 2nd and 18. Dramatic change in what you're doing to the offensive play caller in those situations. So for me, I think that's where it is. Is you've got to your big time players like a BJ Ojulari. He's got 4 sacks on the year. This is the type of game where you need your best players to play their best football. Brian Kelly said it best after I can't remember now if it was
you said
Florida.
yesterday.
It was Florida. Okay, yeah. Well, I know he said it after Kayshawn Booty really had that his breakout game
Mm-hmm.
this season. He made that comment as well. So that's what it's going to have to. That's what it's going to have to be. And then on the back end with your secondary, you've got to hold your containment instead of wanting to peel off and go get Bryce Young. You've got to stay with your coverages and you've got to play smart. Like Brian Kelly said, you've got to play with your eyes. And
Yep.
so, if LSU can do that, I think they have the weapons on offense if they show up like they have the last couple of weeks to be able to make this a barn burner going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I think just kind of building off that a little bit, I do think, some of the names you threw out there, the hookers of the world, Ashford, just some of the running quarterbacks they've already faced this year, I think sets them up well to potentially prepare for Bryce Young. But I will say this, they haven't seen a thrower who can move like Bryce Young can. I mean, he is so good at being able to throw off platform. He's got the arm. He's just got amazing arm talent that I think really um, maybe outside of Hooker, LSU hadn't seen all year. I mean, I think it's a really unique gift that Bryce Young has, and it's going to be really important, like you said, for Harold Perkins, for BJ Ojolari. I would say Micah Baskerville's another guy you got to throw in there. They really like what they've seen out of Baskerville, and kind of, yeah, I mean, just like what Coach Kelly said yesterday in our Monday presser, you've got to make sure that your best players are at their best and they're putting them in good positions to have some success. I would throw in Savion Jones as well. He's a guy that's gotten you some pressure in the backfield, in a rotational role. Not sure what his outlook looks like this week in terms of scheme, in terms of how much they want to use him. But he's an athlete. He's a really fast athlete. He's a really great pass rusher. I think he's a guy that can get some disruption on Bryce Young throughout the course of this game. So I'm kind of hand in hand with you there. Just you got to be disruptive on him. You got to make things difficult, and hope that he doesn't burn you down the field because he does have some weapons. I mean, JoJo Earl is a guy that LSU fans know very well. From the recruiting trail a couple of years ago. He's really fast. He can break away for that, 50, 60, yard touchdown bomb. They got Ja'Cory Brooks. They got Jermaine Burton. Trayshawn Holden is a deep burner as well. So they've got a lot of guys that I think they can implement offensively. It's got to be really important for this secondary at LSU to kind of continue to build on the momentum they started to find in that second, third, and fourth quarters against Ole Miss a couple weeks ago. I think that's just going to be huge. And look, I think you also you can't limit the effect that Matt House is going to have on this game. I mean, he's tied. He's truly tested now in the SEC for several years, going back to Kentucky. I think he's really earned the trust of that locker room, especially on defense. And I think those players really trust that he's going to come up with a good scheme and that they're going to be pretty well prepared for this matchup. But it's going to be a tough one, no doubt. I mean, there's a reason Bama's favored by 13 points, and I think it's going to be a little bit of a slugfest, in terms of scoring. So that's why, we can transition to the offense here. But I think offensively, it's going to be the most important game of the year for Jayden Daniels in this offense. You really are going to get a chance to see, what this improvement means. I mean, again, like you've seen it for 2 weeks against Florida, you've seen it against Ole Miss, but Alabama is still a different beast. I mean, Alabama is Alabama. Nick Saban is now in a position where essentially Alabama is coaching for its or playing for its playoff hopes every week now. So you're going to get the best from Alabama. I will say that like one of the things that has really stood out to me and just in watching this team this year, this Alabama team, um, they they're penalty prone. I mean, they give up a lot of penalties. They have not been as disciplined as you would see past Nick Saban teams to be, and I think that's something LSU's offense is going to have to really lean into. You got to make this a messy game. I think you got to get your receivers out in space. You got to make sure Daniels is still making his aggressive, quick decisions. But you got to take some shots too, because I do think that Alabama is going to give you some opportunities to be able to beat them over the top. Everybody's making I mean, it's been one of the more highly touted matchups, just really individually all season. Is just what you're going to get from Kayshon Boutte against Elias Ricks coming back to the program. Coming back to Death Valley where he played for 2 years. That's going to be a huge storyline on Saturday, at least on the offensive side of the ball. Just what are some of your thoughts, I guess, offensively on what LSU really needs to do to have some success offensively?
Yeah, well, I think I agree with you on Jayden Daniels. On everything that you said about what he's got to do. But I think what him being able to do that starts with protection. And LSU is going to have to get, they're going to have to you're going to have to get creative with some 6 and some 7-man protections. but not give it away every time of what they're going to do. You can't consistently send only put three receivers in a pass pattern. And so, it starts with that protection. It starts with the offensive line, with it continuing to show some of the progress, some of the signs that it has shown the last couple of weeks, and being able to get a running game going. Because if you're asking Jayden Daniels to do it all by himself, and he's got to do it with his legs as well as with his arm. That's going to make it very tough. Josh Williams or Monty Goodwin, they're going to have to give them something out of the run game. And you'd like to see Mike Denbrock, whatever he's been holding back. LSU hasn't. Has LSU running like a gadget play all year?
I don't think they've had a trick play yet. No
I don't
flea
think they've had a
flickers,
trick
no
play
double
all year. Haven't
reverses,
seen a flea flicker or a
no.
reverse, a throw off of a reverse. I mean, the closest thing you got into a gadget play is the little touch pass to Kayshawn when he
Yeah,
comes around on like a
yeah.
little speed sweep. So, Mike Denbrock's got to do some things too. And I'm not saying, come out there and run 10 gadget plays, but come out there and you've got to be creative with your offense to put it in situations to where it can create some advantages over a pretty good defense. Bama's giving up just under 17 points a game. You've got to deal with Will Anderson, number 2 in the SEC with 6 sacks. You've got to deal with that beast. You got to deal with with the disguises that Nick Saban and Pete Golding's going to throw at the LSU offensive line to try to get it confused. So there's just there's a lot of things that really have to go right for the LSU offense. But I think at the end of the day, it all comes back to that offensive line, being able to protect, being able to open up some holes for the running backs to run through, and being able to pick up some of those mental challenges that the defense is going to throw at them in the form of disguises.
Yeah, I mean, one of my question, or my only question to Coach Kelly on Monday, was kind of about the run game and just kind of how the improvement that he's seen the last 2 weeks, particularly from Josh Williams. They seem to be getting in a lot of second and third and shorter situations offensively because of how they're running the ball the last couple weeks, and I think that is going to be huge. You can't get yourself in third and long, second and long against Alabama's defense and expect to have some success on offense. It's just it's not going to compute, especially when you're dealing with Will Anderson, who can pin his ears back and get to into the backfield at will. Dallas Turner's another guy on the other end that they're going to have to really scheme for. Dylan wrote about him in our little look at Alabama piece. He's a monster as well. So it's going to be important, I think, for LSU to establish that run game early. The one thing, I mean, we've said it before, but the one thing you can't afford to do is spot Alabama any kind of points. Whether it's off of field position, if it's off of turnovers, mistakes, you've got to be the one forcing the mistakes on Bama, and I think that's really got to be your key here. Alabama's given up 69 penalties this year, which is really crazy to think about. An Alabama team giving up that many penalties, which is like 125th, I think, out of 131 in the country. It's pretty amazing stat there that Alabama's kind of finding themselves in. But it's going to be really important for LSU to kind of take the fight to Bama early in this game. That's something that Coach Kelly said yesterday is, they got a bunch of fighters and they're open for this challenge, but we've got to take it to them. We can't let Alabama really settle in here. We can't let them take the crowd out of it early. I think that's going to be a really important factor because Alabama has struggled on the road, whether it's against Bama or Tennessee or against Texas or against Tennessee. They've had some struggles on the road this year, so I think the crowd is going to play a really interesting factor in this one as well. But offensively, what I just want to see is just more of the same from Jayden Daniels. I mean, I think he proved it that in the Ole Miss game that it wasn't a fluke. I think it was kind of a sign of things to come. And this is going to be the ultimate test, for him, is if he can kind of stay within himself, stay within this offense, continue to be aggressive and get the ball out to his guys. I think LSU is going to have a lot of success offensively this weekend. I think it's going to be a pretty high scoring game. I think Vegas has the line right now at 55, 56. I might put the over on that, honestly. I think it's going to be a pretty high scoring game. I wouldn't be surprised if both these teams get into the 30s. and really put together a really nice kind of competitive performance overall. I do want to ask you this question though, just um, the overall landscape of this game in particular. What do you think I guess the takeaways should be after this game? What are some things that you want to see? I guess kind of the big picture of what this game means in particular for Brian Kelly as he starts off this year one of the program. Just what do you want to see?
Yeah, well, look, I think that that we thought that there was a chance that LSU could go into this game with having something to play for against Alabama. After the season opener, it didn't look like that though.
No.
You know, in order for LSU to have something to play for and for this game to mean something, LSU had to have a lot. I thought LSU had to have a lot of stuff go right for them. You know, well, I think when we go back and we look at it, losing Mason Smith, your best defensive lineman in the first quarter of the season opener, your injuries to Major Burns, to Seven Banks. You can go down the long list. Joe Fouche's suspension. There's a lot of stuff personnel wise that did not go right over these first 8 games. Yet somehow LSU is still 6-2. As high, number 15 in the polls, might be even higher when the CIP rankings come out Tuesday evening.
Yeah.
So I think when you look at all of that, I think you have to be you have to feel pretty good about even being in this situation, given everything that has gone wrong. Toss in the all of the special teams blunders that are enough to derail 2 seasons,
Yeah,
much
that's
less
true.
one. So when you put all of that together in that big pot of gumbo, I think LSU fans have to feel good about where they are right now. I mean, and then you pull off this upset on Saturday, and I don't think this is a game that you've gone into some LSU Alabama games in the past where you were like, okay, everything's got to go right for LSU and then some.
Yeah. Yeah.
In this game, I don't think you look at it like that. I think you look at it like this. You look at it to where, okay, if the LSU offense shows up that showed up the last 2 weeks, LSU's going to score some points on Bama.
Yeah.
And this has this game could be a lot closer than that 12, 13-point spread, 14-point spread that it's jumped around to, and so, I think LSU fans probably feel better going into this Bama game than they have maybe, obviously outside of the 2019 game, that was in Tuscaloosa. But I think they have to feel pretty good about their chances, their realistic chances
Yeah.
going into this one. And I think that's a tribute to Brian Kelly and his staff for, they've consistently said that, we need to coach better when things have gone awry. We need to coach better. Well, it's starting to look like that they have coached better.
Yeah.
That they have coached better in some instances. They have corrected some things. You're seeing players that are getting better as the season progresses. Jayden Daniels is a perfect example of that. So you have to, there's a lot of encouraging signs. Now, look, if LSU goes out there and you have a repeat of the Tennessee game on Saturday, well, then I think people are going to look at it and they're going to walk away from that. They're just going to be like, yeah, we're not as close as I thought we were.
We got a long ways to go. Yeah.
But I don't think I think the knee-jerk reactions of people jumping off of people threatening to jump off the bandwagon, Brian Kelly needs to be fired or whatever, that we saw after the Tennessee game.
Yeah.
I don't think you would see those. I don't think you would see those after this game. That it would just be like, yeah, well, we thought. I was hoping we were a little bit closer than than it appeared, but. So I think
Yeah.
that would be the major takeaway. Now, if LSU wins this, there's going to be, there's going to be. I don't think there would be any debate as to who the best 2-loss team in the country was if
No.
Kansas State was still a 2-loss team.
Yeah.
This would obviously, bump LSU way up. Now, I think it would be premature to even start talking about,
Right.
Playoff and things like that, because it's a 2-loss team getting in this current landscape with where things are right now. It's kind of tough to really get a grip on and stuff. But before you start looking ahead to all that and stuff, you get through this weekend. Get through
Yeah.
this weekend. You got the 11 a.m. kickoff at Arkansas. That that's never an easy task, having to play the Hogs the week after you play Bama, and then throw in 11 o'clock in the morning on top of that.
Yeah.
And then you
That's
still have
got trap game written all over it for sure.
after Thanksgiving. So there's still some hurdles, still some obstacles for this team to overcome. But to even be talking about those scenarios and looking at, well, this could potentially happen. Who would have thought that that's where you would be after that Florida State loss?
Yeah, no, I agree with all of what you just said. I would say the one thing that I want to see is just be a competitive team. Competitive in everything that you do. Just don't beat yourselves on Saturday, I think, is the biggest thing for me. Start to show those signs. Look, I think if you watch that Tennessee Alabama game a couple weeks ago, and you watch the Tennessee LSU game the week before, you could pretty well see that these are programs that are in very different spots. And so if you can, if in your LSU's case, 2 weeks later, be able to start to show the rapid improvement that you were hoping to see against Tennessee, implemented against Alabama, I think that's just a huge positive sign. If you can stay competitive in this game, you can kind of go into, I would say, go into the second half with a draw. If you're down 7, if you're up 3, tied, whatever the case may be, because we do know that LSU's been a second half team all season long, and they've been really good at making the halftime adjustments. So as long as they're not in an insurmountable hole, I think going into the half, I think in this game you're going to get a pretty good outcome if you're LSU. So I would say that, and then just kind of building off maybe what you said, I think just big picture as a whole, you know, part of why Brian Kelly is here is for this game. It's for games like this. You want to see that discipline, you want to see that mindset, that focus in the big moments. And there's not going to be a bigger moment this year because, LSU is actually playing for something. I mean, if you win this game, you're in the driver's seat of the SEC West, and you have an opportunity to potentially go to Atlanta and play for a championship game later this year. I know that's stuff that's, really off the mind. You shouldn't be thinking about, before this game's even played. But these are the moments that Brian Kelly was brought here for. I think that, in some ways, not in all ways, but just in a part, he's going to be great at his first couple of years here of how he does in this game. I mean, this is an important game every year for LSU in terms of standings, in terms of just the history behind it, the recent history behind this matchup. So I do think it's going to be a very important moment for LSU this season to come out and look like a team that can be competitive and be a mainstay in the SEC for years to come. So those are just kind of my thoughts. I think we handled the game pretty well. I think it's going to be an interesting battle, but we're going to be back later this week, probably to get one last pod in before the game, whether it's on recruiting, whether it's on just some final details and predictions and whatnot. But before that, is there anything else you wanted to add, Sonny, or are we good?
No, man, I think we're good.
Yeah, I do
I think
too.
we're good. Just
All right.
be a good week on the site. A lot of content, a lot of recruiting stuff. Looking ahead to the weekend visitors and things like that. So make sure you stay plugged in.
Absolutely. Be on the lookout for all our stuff, all our content. We got a bunch of visitors rolling in, really updates, by the hour. So make sure you guys are staying tuned in. We'll certainly be back later this week, but until then, we'll catch you guys later.